Welcome. I want to thank the members of the media for being here today, and I want to thank Maggie Duncan with the Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police. It's wonderful that we're able to gather here with the Chiefs Association, the sheriffs, and do this in conjunction with them every year for the last several years. Talk to you a little bit about 3D. December is designated on a national level as Drunk and Drugged Driving Awareness Month. So we call it 3D, and what we sometimes forget is that impaired driving is more than just alcohol. I know Kyle Anderson's here from the District Attorney's Office here in Nashville in 21st District, and they can speak directly to that as they prosecute these DUI and impaired driving cases. Also have some other partners here that we want to thank. Matt is here, Kate Ritchie, who's the Executive Director with the Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Jill Moody is here with Operation Lifesaver, and they do great work across the state of Tennessee. But each year, as we said, December is recognized as Drunk and Drug Driving Prevention Month. In 2013, Tennessee lost 349 lives due to impaired driving crashes, and you can see each location of the crash is here on the maps in front of you. We've been fortunate to see a reduction in these fatalities over the years. But again, one life lost is too many, and we're talking about very, very preventable crashes. One of the reasons why we've been able to reduce these crashes over the last several years and reduce the number of lights that you see represented here is due to working together. And how we do that is through education, enforcement, and engineering. Education is our booze it and lose it message that everybody sees across the state of Tennessee at various venues, sporting events, radio, TV, but none of that is good without enforcement to back that up. And that's why, in conjunction with the chiefs and the sheriffs, the DA's office, all of our law enforcement partners across the state help us to do that. And engineering is the third component, and we are fortunate to be a part in the Governor's Highway Safety Office of the Tennessee Department of Transportation. And you're going to hear from Commissioner John Schroer in just a minute regarding that. But right now I'd like to introduce to you Tanya Thomas. Tanya is the mother of Calvin Anthony Thomas, and Calvin was killed by a drunk driver in November of 2012, and Tanya is going to share a little bit with us now. Tanya?
Good afternoon. Thank you for this introduction. I am, again, the proud mother of Calvin Anthony Thomas. Calvin was my only son. He was both a promising, inspiring student, obtaining his degree in business management. But more than what he was able to do and have done in terms of his completion of education and work and all, he was my pride and joy. He was a young man inspired to assist and love people just out of a genuine place. He and I both years ago had begun a community service. We were just one that just, if you met him one time, you met him. He never met a stranger, and you felt like you met him and known him forever. On November the 8th of 2012, my life made the greatest altered change that no parent ever wants to hear. I left early that morning, seeing my son, kissing him bye as we ordinarily do, plans for the evening, only to get a call later that has now altered my life forever. Calvin was again my only son, and he was not only my son, but he was my good friend. He was also my confidant. He was my inspiration for life, as many parents believe on their children. Drunk driving has been now something more different for me, as well as I effectively as well try to get out and be supportive as possible too. One life is one too many. You never know who you're leaving the earth and what they could have done in their continual accomplishments. He could have had the cure to cancer, he could have called the cure of anything, but certainly he cured love for me and many others in our family, just for his presence and for his life. Life is very precious, and it should be considered just that. And as a result of someone's lack of thought and lack of just selfishness, someone took a decision and made that decision to drive while being drunk. The effect is continual, even for me. This is the holiday. This is also the anniversary time for us, so it's the most difficult time for me, even at this time. Just thus the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, I am yet standing and will continue to stand. But I do hope that with the efforts of the officers behind me and those that are supportive, will make the continual efforts of bringing some resolve and assisting this continual dilemma of heartache and pain for those who are a problem with this matter, who later become a victim of the circumstances. Time will never prevail for allowing me to tell you all his time for 25 years, but I will say again, he was a great asset to society at large. He was not only a good employee, a good student, he was a great son, he was a great grandson, he was a great nephew, but more importantly, he was my son and my joy. And for anyone living and understanding parenting, that is the core of why we live and why we get up and why we do the things we do. So as a single parent, my life has now changed, again, as a decision of someone else. So I just want to thank everyone for this time, just to give a chance to share about someone so precious. And I'm sure every parent feels the same, but the fruit of Calvin's life is continually speaking, even as I speak today. His efforts and his continual strength and the support that he's done throughout his life, his fruits are still standing. So I thank God for that.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for your courage to be able to share that story. And we think about just in November of 2012, just 2 short years ago, and how life can change, and it absolutely represents a story that goes with every single one of these lives, a story that goes with every single one of the numbers that we talked about. It's not a nameless, faceless tragedy. It's a senseless occurrence that takes place due to, as Tanya said, selfishness. One of the reasons why we've been able together to reduce impaired driving crashes over the years is our commitment to the 3 E's, as we talked about earlier: education, enforcement, and engineering. And the number one proponent of safety in the Tennessee Department of Transportation is its commissioner, John Schroer. And Commissioner Schroer is going to share with us now.
Thanks, Kendall, and Ms. Thomas. We appreciate you coming and talking, and we're sorry that you had to do this, but your words certainly will, hopefully will inspire others. I also want to thank everybody behind me for the cooperation and the work that they do to help save lives. It's a team effort in the state of Tennessee, and it's something that we probably won't ever get our hands around. But there's so many facets to it, and one of the things I really want to kind of bring up is our program to protect a queue, and what we're trying to do is prevent those accidents from happening, the secondary accidents in that program, and we find that 18% of all fatalities on interstates are secondary wrecks, and that's a huge number. And what we're trying to do in the Protect a Queue program is to reduce that, and we're doing that by notification on message boards and by actually training our workers. We've had over 1,800 of our employees trained to help protect those people that are stuck in a queue. And the interesting thing is all of us have been stuck. We've come into a stalled car or a stalled area on the interstate, and we're stopped. And the first thing all of us do is look in our rearview mirrors to see what's coming up. And this all started about 2 years ago when 2 young people were killed in a queue by a tractor trailer. And I know that they looked in their rearview mirror and they saw a tractor trailer coming into them about 50 miles an hour, and there wasn't anything they can do. And our goal in this Protect a Queue program is to make people aware of what's coming in front of them. And it really ties back into distracted and drunk and impaired driving, because we're trying to educate people of what's in front of them, and that's a critical part of driving, and you've got to know what's coming up. And if you're not aware, then something can happen, and it can be a dangerous thing. So in our Protect a Queue program, we're really working hard to do that, and we all have to do things together. We all have our things to do, and the Highway Patrol does theirs, Safety does theirs. In our Governor's Highway Safety Program, it's certainly awareness and trying to make people, especially during this season, but quite frankly during any season, to be aware and to not drink, not drive, not be distracted. And I do, at this point in time, I get to introduce my good friend Larry Godwin, who's the Deputy Commissioner at Tennessee Department of Safety and one of my partners.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And talking about numbers and putting a face with those numbers, and you look at last year's year-to-date numbers in 2013, we had 917 deaths, and I'm talking overall fatalities on our roadways. So far this year, we've had 880. That's down 37, but it's, as the Colonel will tell you, that's not good enough. And I guess if I could say one thing to our drivers out there, in particular, I think sometimes our younger drivers, and that is to stop and think. Stop and think before you do something. For goodness sake, the families, the sisters, the brothers, the mothers, the fathers, relatives that feel that pain when a loved one is gone. And I guess the other thing I want to just mention too is buckle up. Why is it, and the Colonel will tell you this, why is it that the young men that don't want to wear a seatbelt in a pickup truck, go figure. He can give you stats on the number of fatalities due to not wearing a seatbelt. Simple things that can be avoided. And also, we talk about the alcohol, we talk about the drugs, we talk about texting, and we talk about the use of cell phones, and we talk about all these other things that can be avoided that will stop that fatality. But there's nothing more important than safety, and it can be done that way. But in an effort to combat this, we utilize the crash program, the Colonel does, and the Titan. And that's using analytics, using the data-driven approach, and trying to make a difference out there in every way that we can. And I'd like to now bring up Colonel Tracy Trott, Tennessee Highway Patrol, and let him tell you a little bit about the crash methodology. Colonel.
Well, I want to remind you a couple things. We concentrate a lot this time of year on drinking and driving. There's a lot of parties, there's a lot of alcohol available. It's not just the alcohol, although that's a big problem. There's a lot of impaired drivers that are taking prescription drugs, that are using illegal narcotics that are just as dangerous, just as much of an impairment on the road as alcohol. So we need to be careful in all those areas and remind people not to abuse those drugs. The Highway Patrol has been very successful in their DUI-related enforcement programs over the last few years. We're up 32% in our DUI arrests this year in 2014. We're up 152% from 2010. So we've had a big emphasis on DUI enforcement, and that emphasis has paid off in the number of people that die because of impaired drivers. We've gone from a state that had 28% of our fatalities dying because of an impaired driver to a state that has 20%. That's a big drop-off in a 3-year period. So we're very happy with that. We're proud of that, but as Commissioner Godwin said, it's not good enough. We still have to do more. We still have to work on this problem consistently and hard, and we still have to do press conferences like these to remind the public that this is still a serious problem in our society. We face a lot of criticism sometimes from small groups of people that will criticize our tactics about how we enforce the DUI statutes, and we've had that happen recently. I would say to them two things. They've never had their family affected by a drunk driver, and they've never spent one day in this lady's shoes. And if they had, they wouldn't criticize. They would support our efforts. So I ask you to get behind us in your efforts to eliminate drunk driving and drug driving from our highways and help us keep you safe. Thank you. I want to introduce my partner, Chuck Forbes from the Chiefs Association. We're very lucky in Highway Patrol that we have great partnerships with the sheriffs and the chiefs, and we could not be successful without these partnerships. These guys do a great job in augmenting our forces, assisting us with roadblocks, and doing all the things we need to do to protect the public. So Chuck, thank you.
As you can tell from the group that's standing behind me, the law enforcement in Tennessee is very fortunate to have tremendous partnerships, cooperative efforts like this one. And members of all these agencies behind me will be out in force during the holiday season to make sure do everything we can to make sure that we don't have to go to Tanya's house to deliver that message. But as dedicated and as serious as we are about the enforcement and stopping the impaired driver, we can't be everywhere at once. We want to encourage the public to contact law enforcement if they see an impaired driver. If they know somebody that's been drinking at a party and they're trying to leave in a vehicle, call law enforcement, let us come and intervene and stop that fatality before it can happen. One of the most important things is the presence of the law enforcement. As we spoke at another conference last week, was the high visibility. You'll see a lot of law enforcement, THP, sheriff's office, police vehicles out there. But again, it's not enough to cover everywhere, and we need the public's help. So at this time, I'd like to introduce the president of the Tennessee Sheriff's Association, Sheriff Bill Holt.
Thank you, and it is an honor to represent the sheriffs across this state and all law enforcement. These impaired drivers and drunk drivers, whether it's drunk or narcotics or whatever it is, prescription drugs, they impact the communities in other ways, in insurance rates and families, torn grief that lasts through, ruins the holidays, unsurmountable. And again, until you've walked in this lady's shoes, which I have not, and hope I don't ever have the opportunity to do that. There's insurance cost. All of us wind up paying some percentage every time somebody gets into a problem or we have a fatality, or even during an arrest or after an arrest. It impacts even the families of those people who get arrested or get caught drunk driving. They don't have ways to get home. The money that they should have been, that have to pay in fines and things, they should have been putting bread and milk and paying the rent and the heating bills and all of this sort of thing. There's a great expense to it, so it impacts a lot of people. We want to thank all of those that during the holiday season, particularly that offer the free rides, the sober rides. You know, it's just so easy in some of the bigger cities and other places to provide that service. You know, even for those that get out and have one too many and still have enough sense to make a phone call, it's free. We do that. The Sheriff's Association, along with all law enforcement, is dedicated to, you've heard this, zero tolerance. And it's zero. How many deaths are acceptable across the state of Tennessee because of impaired driving or any other cause? Absolutely zero. None is acceptable for us. And we all join in partnership, and the Governor's Highway Safety Plan has provided a lot of resources to the smaller agencies to provide them with the additional resources and manpower able to get out here and strictly enforce the zero tolerance as it goes to drunk driving and impaired driving. So we wish each and every one of you a holiday season, and again, it's a collective effort between all law enforcement because there's not enough of us across the state to take care of this dreaded situation. So thank you. Kendall.
All right, so you've heard from our speakers today. Please make a plan this December before you go out and celebrate. Designate a sober driver, whether it's December, whether it's holiday season, whether it's any other holiday throughout the year, whether it's any day throughout the year, always designate a sober driver. And when it comes to impaired driving and pills and narcotics, remember, buzz driving is drunk driving. If everybody realized that, if you've got a bus, don't get behind the wheel. If you've had anything to drink, if you've taken any kind of prescription drug that gives you that extra edge or takes the edge off, don't get behind the wheel, designate a sober driver. I want to thank all of our speakers here today. Commissioner Schroer, thank you so much. Commissioner Godwin, Colonel Trott, good friends, Chuck Forbes from Lewisburg, Sheriff Holt from Robertson County, Colonel Trott, thank you. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody is going to be available for questions. Tanya, you're the most important one that's here today because you had the courage to share your story, and you're the reason why we're all here. And you're the reason why we continue to do what we do. So thank you again for being here. Thanks to all our guests as well.